Good morning, Tim. Would you like to do a mic check? Good morning, Tim. Would you like to do a mic check?
Tim, you may be on mute.
Sorry, I had two screens open. Yes, thanks. Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good morning, Joseph. Would you like to do a mic check? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, let's do a mic check.
Great. I hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Manira. Would you like to do a mic check?
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Steve. Would you like to do a mic check?
Mic check. How's everyone?
Doing great. Thank you. Good morning, Yuwen. Would you like to do a mic check? Oh, still connecting. Good morning, UN. Would you like to do a mic check? Oh, you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
UN, you may want to mute again.
So I can't seem to, good morning, Supervisor Wasserman. I can't seem to restart my video. It says that, oh, now I can. You've allowed me to start. Thank you.
Hey there, good morning.
Good morning, John. Would you like to do a mic check?
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. We hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Wait,
Harry,
just,
would you, oops, I'm sorry.
no, go right ahead.
Harry, did we check your mic already?
Can you hear me?
Yes, hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Harry, question for you. I was going to suggest to Supervisor Simidian putting your item number 5 on consent. Do you have any issues with that? You're muted, Harry.
Yeah, no. I mean, we typically do them. That's appreciated. But no issues. We have nothing to report. Thank you.
Okay, you got it. Hello, Supervisor Simidian.
Good morning, Supervisor.
Good morning. I was just checking with Harry if item number 5 was okay to put on consent, and he has no issues to report. So unless you have questions, that'll be something I'll suggest in a few minutes.
Thank you, Supervisor. I have no problems with item 5 going on the consent calendar if you'd like to do that today.
Super. I've got 10:01. Are we good to go?
Ready to go. Thank you, sir.
Super.
Supervisor submitting, I just wanted to advise that one of our cooling towers is down at 70 West, so maybe a little bit warmer than you're used to.
We live in interesting times. Thank you, Ms. Gallegos.
We do. We have a call to order, and I think we'll just acknowledge that the 2 voting members of the Hewlett Committee, Supervisor Simidian and Wasserman, are here. Dave, is that enough for you?
Unfortunately, sir, we do have to do a roll call.
Please do a roll call.
Thank you. Good morning, Vice Chairperson Simidian
Present.
and Chairperson Wasserman.
Here.
Thank you, sir. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much for that. Now we move to public comment. David, do we have anybody wishing to speak on public comment?
We do have speakers on this item, sir.
Wonderful. How many speakers do we have?
Currently, we have 2 speakers.
Okay, let's give them 3 minutes each.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, before we go to public comment, I don't know if you mentioned it previously, but item 7 had been on the consent calendar. And when we get to that, I believe we're going to pull that from consent. Yes.
Yes, we are. That was an error on our part, and 7 should not be on consent. So anybody wishing to speak?
No problem. Just wanted to make sure I didn't miss my moment. Thank you so much.
You didn't, and you have many more moments to come.
Thank you for that, sir.
Here.
Our first speaker is Scott Largent. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Good morning, everyone. Scott Largent. I do appreciate Supervisor Wasserman following the rules. I am a big advocate for that, and especially with government meetings. What we've been running into now is that public comment gets taken from 3 minutes to 2 minutes to 1 minute. And the stuff that Supervisor Chavez is doing right now, it just seems like a daily Brown Act violation. I'm very, very confused. I keep reading through state law, trying to figure out why no one has ever been charged for violating the Brown Act. It seems like a fantastic law, but if there's no enforcement of it, what's the actual point? At city council meetings right now, what they're doing is they're toggling multiple items together that involve police reform, and it's not the route to go. In Santa Clara County, when we had issues with our sheriff's department, including the Department of Corrections and what was going on, of course, in our jails, we created a Blue Ribbon Commission, and we had some serious meetings. And Joe, you understand that. We went through those. I mean, those things went on and on and on, and all the recommendations. everybody from the community was involved and everybody got the opportunity to speak. And that was another committee that was ran properly by you, Joe. Why is it night and day between some of you politicians that don't want the public to speak? I guess what I'm asking is, can you put some political pressure on these people? They are technically your coworkers, and I consider it one living, breathing political system here, and it's very anti-democratic, and we fight and fight to be heard here. Myself, when meetings don't quite work out and when my speaker cards get ripped up and I get silenced, I go out onto a sidewalk and I utilize sound amplified devices. But then of course you guys know what happens after that. Then you end up getting prosecuted. Then you get stuck in the system, stay away orders, all that other stuff. And that's really not necessary if I was listened to in the beginning of speaking. That's what the point of public comment is. And I consider you people healing administrators. I'm a member of the public. I'm a taxpayer. And I put my grievances out on the table so I don't have to go out on that sidewalk. And what we're coming up with now is those are our only options here in Santa Clara County. So I do appreciate you guys just hearing me vent my frustrations and allowing me to have that 3 minutes, because that's therapy for me today. And the fact that I had ample time to talk, I'm going to go on with my day, and it's probably going to be a good one. So thank you.
All right, take care.
The next speaker is Justin Grimmer. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hello, I'm Justin Grimmer, a professor in the Department of Political Science at Stanford University and a homeowner on Stanford's campus. I'm also a member of the Community Committee for the San Juan Residential District Historic Survey and Development Standards Study, and that's to consider the creation of a historic district on Stanford's campus. I speak today to encourage this committee to reassess this study. This reassessment is essential because the approach to the study has been altered from what was presented to you and what was presented in public meetings. The committee should collect more information on the study, both to inform the Board of Supervisors and to inform my neighbors, the residents of the neighborhood, on the direction of where this effort is headed. I think this reassessment and extra information is necessary for at least 6 reasons. The first and most important is that it has expanded beyond what was represented to neighbors in the public meeting. Already, the committee has recommended imposing the 2000 GUP standards on Stanford homeowners, which could impose potentially dramatic costs on the residents. Beyond this, there's a whole myriad set of reasons why we might think this study is unnecessary. First, it is redundant. Stanford and the county already have procedures in place to protect historic resources on campus. It is expensive. This study is wasting valuable county resources on a process that is, as I just mentioned, redundant. It is deeply unpopular. In fact, in a recent survey of Stanford leaseholders, over 60% of respondents indicated they opposed the survey. And to be clear, this poll was done before the application of GUP standards to all homes, which will result in, I would suspect, even deeper unpopularity of this issue. Beyond this sort of procedure, moving to historical designations, affirms racially exclusionary practices. I don't have to tell you all, but historic districts have often been used as a tool to prevent persons of color and lower income families from moving into neighborhoods. Certainly in this time period, this is exactly the kind of policy move we should be avoiding. And finally, this move will do nothing to alleviate the housing shortage that imposes substantial hardship on families in this area. And this issue is particularly pertinent for me as my family bounced around rental units as I chased tenure at Stanford and tried to figure out a way to afford living in this great Bay Area. In closing, I hope you will reconsider this unpopular, costly, redundant, and counterproductive historical study. Thank you for your time and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
This concludes our speakers on this item, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. That concludes, as you just heard, our public comment. We now move to item number 3, which is approval of the consent calendar. As you heard Supervisor Simitian mention a few minutes ago, item 7 was on our agenda. That was an error on behalf of my office. We have pulled that item off and it will be heard in its regular order. Supervisor, that leaves 6, 8, 9, 10, and 11 on the calendar. And with your permission, I'd like to add number 5 on there as well.
No objection, Mr. Chairman. If you'd like a motion to that effect, I'm happy to offer a motion at this time.
Thank you. First, I'd like to turn to David, see if we have any speakers on 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, and 11.
At present, we have no speakers, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll look to that motion.
Move the consent calendar as amended, sir.
Thank you very much. I'll second the motion to approve 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, and 11. With that, we move on to item 4, receiving a report from our Parks and Recs Department.
Mr. Chair, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We're going to need to do a roll call vote for the consent calendar, sir.
Yes, we will.
Vice Chairperson Simidian
Simidian, aye.
and Chairperson Wasserman.
Wasserman, aye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And thanks for catching that, David. Mr. Rocha, your turn on number 4.
Great, thank you. Good morning, committee, supervisors. I don't have a formal presentation for this item. I give a brief summary about on this item, and then we have park staff here that's available to answer any questions the committee may have.
Hey, Tim.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. So just real briefly, as we're well aware that the department's had a long history with the Santa Clara Valley Water District in operating recreational amenities within their properties. For Anderson Lake, of course, has been studied for a long time. The Anderson Dam has been studied for a long time in relation to earthquake impacts onto the dam and what that can mean to downstream flooding and the impacts of what the nearby faults could have. And it's been studied since 1998. Further studies were occurred in 2009. And as a result of some of those studies in 2009, the capacity of the reservoir has been reduced to about 58% since 2011 to accommodate those, mitigate some of the impacts that could be related to the earthquakes. The district then initiated a planning study to look at Anderson Dam seismic retrofit project in 2012. That was to identify and carry out a design solution to permanently mitigate these risks. In addition to retrofitting the dam, the project would also replace the existing outlet pipe that runs below the dam to improve outflow capacity and reliability and increase the wall height of both the spillway and the dam crest. The department had been meeting kind of ad hoc with the district since 2012. And then in 2016, the district found that a more extensive retrofit would be required and requiring a preparation of an EIR. At that point, the department started meeting monthly with the district to identify what those impacts could be to the park and the recreation elements, as well as the park, and also find an appropriate mitigation and other solutions that could mitigate those impacts to the park. In February 2020, the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, directed the district to immediately lower the reservoir and restrict the elevation to 565 feet. At that time, it did not require immediate action as the reservoir surface was already below that elevation. But they are also to begin lowering the reservoir to 488 feet or dead pool by October 1st. FERC issued this directive based on the continuing risk to public safety. Subsequent to that order, the district has then since rapidly increased the pace of their work in planning. In this new phase of work, the district has proposed fast tracking one particular element of the Anderson Dam seismic retrofit project, which is the replacement of the low-level outlet or the tunnel project, and to allow more rapid dewatering. FERC concluded that that proposed tunnel project combined with this directive to dewater would increase interim protections for residents and property downstream. So what that means for us is that these actions have and will continue to have continued impacts on the recreation for several years to come. Boating has been restricted on Anderson Lake since the summer of 2019, to where we had some boating in the springtime, but as the water levels went down, boating was restricted in the summertime, and we have not had any boating operations since then in all of 2020. Valley Water provided written notice recently, according to our master partnership agreement, to restrict or modify permitted recreational uses in designated portions of their own property in relation to Anderson Dam to carry out the projects described above, which is the tunnel project as well as the seismic retrofit of the dam. The district will continue suspension of permitted recreational uses for project pre-construction activities beginning October 1st and continuing through the completion of the tunnel project, which is identified as being targeted for December of 2024. The potential for the dam retrofit project, which still requires permitting and some funding, but is targeted for completion in 2030, December of 2030. Those impacts would include beginning October 1st and then continuing indefinitely would be the Toyon group picnic area and parking areas would no longer be at use for the public. Serpentine Trail would be closed and the dam would be closed. The suspension of use for the immediate implementation of the tunnel project beginning October 2020 into December of 2024 would also include the Live Oak picnic group picnic area. And then of course for the seismic retrofit project, which goes until 2030 as well, the Anderson Dam boat parking lot, fishing, boating access, vehicle parking areas, the boat launch, Cody Road, from the toe of the dam to the boat parking lot, and the Rosenden Trailhead would be limited access and access, although the Anderson Dam parking areas as well as the Cody Road would be closed completely. So with that, you know, the impacts that we have are not only at the facilities at the Anderson Dam, but there will be downstream impacts as well. With the flow rates and the increase of the tunnel, as well as the release of water to allow for the tunnel construction project. Our facilities, and including the Cody Creek Parkway Trail System, has some low crossing areas which will be inundated and flooded and will be closed over time. That the department is working with Valley Water to come up with mitigations and compensations for those trail crossing impacts. There's also, of course, impacts to recreational use and revenue related to the recreational use. Over the period of the construction period of the Anderson Dam, over the 9 years for construction of the retrofit project is estimated about $1.5 million in revenue potential for boating activities and the use of some of the picnic sites. There's also going to be impacts as the board requested information on. There's also going to be impacts to non-county property and individuals. There's the water district has conducted some inundation flood maps downstream. Most of those are concentrated in mid-Coyote Creek, where there's high populations in the downtown areas. It did not include our Coyote Creek Parkway and other areas that we're still trying to work with Valley Water to get those inundation maps so we can understand the true impacts of Parkway inundations and flooding potential even after the tunnel project is in place. The district has proposed through in a presentation to their board of directors and a project description and engineers report that they are proposing 3 solutions for the concurrent to the tunnel project to address the downstream flooding outside of the parkway impacts. And those include flood walls, levees, and acquisition of elevation of low-lying areas. Of course, these measures will be implemented along Mid-Coyote Creek, as mentioned, and primarily between Highway 280 and Oakland Road. Finally, the board requested information related to potential impacts to homeless. Unfortunately, the district does not track or locate the encampments or individuals living along the creek. Although the impacts of the dewatering depends on the proximity of those encampments would be to the creek bed. The proposed flow rates must be approved by FERC. So if it's determined to be insufficient, higher flow rates will be required, and there may be some impacts along the inundated areas, maybe larger than they were previously. Again, the district does not track where the encampments are located, so it just depends on the encampment location to the creek beds. And with that, I have staff that are here to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Don, I appreciate that. John and Tim, good to see you. I'll turn to Supervisor Samitian, and if he has any questions. My only suggestion, Supervisor, is that we get a quarterly report from Parks on anything that regarding this project that might change along the way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have some concerns and questions, and I would ask, perhaps, do we have speakers on this item? Forgive me, I don't know if we do.
speakers to go first?
We do
Yeah.
have public speakers on this, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful in making sure that any issues that I might want to address get teed up, and if there are others that I might be able to follow up on those as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Take it away, Dave.
Thank you. Our first speaker is Elias Madrid. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking. Elias, are you there?
Yeah, but I was going to say something to the Parks and Recreations guy, but those parks are not handled by the county, so forgive me for that. I'll speak later on something else.
All right. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mila Romero. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking. Mila, are you there? We'll try one more time. Mila Romero. And Mila is not responding. That concludes the speakers on this item, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Simitian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just first ask Ms. Gallegos or her staff, perhaps someone else is available, but my recollection is that when the folks from the Water District asked us, our board, to sign on in support of their special legislation, that we were explicit, although I abstained on the vote because of the concerns I had, it was AB 3005, that we were explicit about the fact that the version we were supporting at the time was the version that was in print, and that if there were any amendments, and I expressed particular concern about so-called expedited judicial review, that we would be notified of those amendments. I believe we have been notified of amendments, but my question is, are we still listed as being in support of AB 3005, which I'm not inclined to think we should be, given the fact that the bill has changed, as I candidly predicted it would.
Sylvia's muted. There we go.
Yes, I'm hitting the button. So Supervisor Simitian, I don't know the answer to that, but I will ask our intergovernmental relations staff and get an answer to you, ideally during this meeting, if not following the meeting.
Thank you. Well, just to make sure I'm not being too subtle here, Ms. Gallegos, do we have somebody from Valley Water on the call or available? If not, here's my concern. I understand that the 4 members of the board voted aye, and I certainly respect that, and I abstained for the reasons stated. But my reading and my recollection is that it was on the measure at that as it was in print on that date, and if the measure was amended, which I believe it was, since we were advised by Valley that it had been, then that means there's no longer an active support position on the part of the county. Now, I could be wrong about any or all of those details, but I don't think so.
That's generally my recollection, but I would want to confirm that for myself.
All right, well,
anyway.
I would appreciate it if, Mr. Chairman, if you're amenable, that we direct staff to please confirm and to please make sure that if that's the case, that our county is no longer listed as being in support, given that expedited judicial review, which is essentially a way for the district to avoid full compliance with CEQA.
I will follow up with that.
All right, thank you. Then I think on the substance of all this, appreciated the report. I guess I want to go back to Mr. Rocha, if there's not anyone on the call who is from Valley Water, and say, so we have a partnership agreement, which I believe you've indicated does require Valley Water to essentially replace or fund the replacement of the county's investments. Do I have that part straight so far, Mr. Rocha?
Yes, sir.
So how's that going to happen?
So in the agreement itself talks about the replacement. So we are in discussions with Valley Water about the replacements and some of the other aspects that they are talking about beyond their properties that's outside the partnership agreement, we are in negotiation with them, and we will be bringing that back to the Board of Supervisors.
Well, I guess my question is, are we going to get either an enforceable document, a promise on a specific dollar amount, or cash in hand before they do the work? I don't want to be in a position where we are essentially left holding the bag and have to argue or make our case after the fact. You know of my concern around what happened, with the flood control measures in my district, which were not performed as represented by the district. And so, I'm sitting here with a sign in my office that says skepticism is a virtue, and that's kind of where I am today. So help me feel like we're not going to give away the store and then discover that we have to bargain to get what is rightfully ours.
Yeah, so on the lands that are outside of their properties, we will be looking at securing those ahead of time, because some of those impacts are going to be occurring subsequent to the work that they're doing. So we are looking at getting some replacement projects and putting that in place, like replacing our low flow crossings. Right now they're low flow crossings, replacing those with bridges, and we're looking to have an agreement with the district prior to the dam retrofit projects and some of those. It would probably be done at the near time, but at least have that work done as part of their project and have it incorporated as part of their project. As far as replacing the existing
Excuse me, Mr. Rocha, through the chair.
Yes,
what if we were to direct you to have the agreement before the work is done? Does that pose a problem?
We'll have to, because a lot of the work is probably going to be used by utilizing their contractors as part of the project. So getting that work ahead, especially with the expedited work that they're looking at doing. The tunnel project is to begin October 1st. So we need to make sure that
Excuse me, Mr. Rocha, but October 1st is a date somebody picked. If somebody picked the date, then the obvious question is, why don't we have written assurances that the funding that they're obliged to provide is in place? Am I missing something? Please correct me if I'm misunderstanding. But it sounds to me like the work is scheduled to go ahead on October 1st without either the cash in hand or a written document assuring us that we have a legally enforceable way to obtain the cash.
I have Tim Heffington's on the line as well. He's more familiar with the master agreement, master partnership agreement that we have. I don't believe it specifies ahead of time, but Tim, maybe you can give us shine some light.
Well, I see before Mr. Heffington speaks, Mr. Wasserman, Mr. Chairman, I see that we have Steve Mitra on the line from County Counsel's office. I just, either in comments from Mr. Rocha or Mr. Heffington, I just like to know what level of engagement or involvement the County Counsel's office has had, because I don't feel like our interests are being, I'm not yet hearing anything that would convince me our interests are being fully protected to the degree that they necessarily should be.
Steve and Tim.
Well, I don't have firsthand knowledge of the level of engagement of the Deputy County Counsel in charge of counseling parks. So I would have to look into that. Tim Heffington may actually know the answer to that question, but I'm happy to look into that and also provide you some feedback, Supervisor Simitian and Supervisor Wasserman, if that's what's needed. But I personally don't have that information right this second.
Thank you. Tim, what can you tell us?
Yes, thank you, Supervisor. So as Director Rocha indicated, we only recently received the actual compensation letter. We have consulted with Chris Cheldon and County Counsel to let him know this will be forthcoming. And prior to district mobilization or activity on site, we will be bringing forward to the board an agreement that outlines conditions. Although the concepts have only had preliminary discussion at this point, the concepts that we have discussed would be that if the district desires to take property, parkland, in lieu of eminent domain, we would lay out a process by which they could mobilize once the board has approved certain conditions that would include compensation and mitigation, as Director Rocha outlined, are required under the master partnership agreement. To clarify one statement about the partnership agreement, it really establishes a framework, but does not establish the specific conditions nor construction requirements that would occur. It only lays out the process. So those negotiations are ongoing. We will be coming forward to the board with a full packet prior to granting the district access or ability to conduct construction.
Prior to their taking action, you're saying?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Supervisor Simitian.
Thank you. And does that mean prior to October the 1st?
The date is a moving target, as Director Rocha indicated. They desire to mobilize very soon, hopefully in October. We are working with them on the details to determine if that is possible. So we have not committed to a specific target date, only a willingness to work with them to try to meet their suggested date.
Well, it seems to me, if I read the materials right, we're looking at $1.67 million in anticipated impacts over a period of years. Do I remember that correctly, Mr. Rocha?
That's just the revenue side. The impacts are greater than that in some of the use areas and other elements that will be impacted.
So there's two, there are two concerns, and please help me understand the details a little bit more. Obviously, I guess my question again, to be very direct and get a very clear answer, please, is are we assured that before anybody from Valley Water takes any physical action on county lands, that these agreements will have been approved?
Speaking from the staff level, that is the intention, yes, Supervisor, that an agreement outlining those conditions will be approved by the board prior to district mobilization.
Mr. Heffington, I don't mean to be flip, but I intend to get up tomorrow at 6 a.m. and go out and work out for a couple of hours, but there's every chance in the world my good intentions won't be realized. So what I'm looking for here is a firm commitment from County Council's office and from you all, you and Mr. Rocha, that we will not authorize any such action until we've got an agreement with our Board of Supervisors. Once burned, twice shy, and it's, that's just where we are. So can, Ms. Gallegos, can we get that commitment from staff?
So I want to ask Mr. Rocha, can we make that commitment?
I believe we can. I think the difficult part is the tunnel project and what those potential. I need to work with staff a little bit more closely on what official takes would occur with the tunnel project.
May I suggest this then, Supervisor, since I don't think we're prepared to respond to that commitment, and when we do make a commitment, we want to honor it. May I suggest I'll meet with staff and council offline, and we can communicate something formally to the committee, I hope by close of business tomorrow, if not the beginning of next week, because I want to make sure we get this right. I
appreciate that. And let me just be clear, if we can't get it sorted out, I'll agendize it as a board item so that the full board is mindful of this. But letting folks start to take action with impact on the county and saying we'll work it out later is not an acceptable path to me, nor do I believe it is consistent with the expectations under the broader agreement that Mr. Heffington referenced, which is supposed to guide the creation of subsequent documents. And then I was asking about work on our properties. There's also work that is not on our properties, but that has an impact on our property, yes? No?
Yes.
Okay, so if that's the case, then similar agreements are anticipated, yes?
Yes, those that are going to be impacting our properties outside of district-owned properties, an agreement will be in place and brought to the Board of Supervisors prior to those impacts.
Prior to what? I'm sorry, Mr. Rocha.
Prior to the impacts.
Prior to the impacts on county-owned properties.
Okay. I noticed the careful choice of words. Prior to the impacts does not mean prior to the work being done, which will create the later impacts. Did I get the distinction right?
Prior to the work being done on county-owned lands, an agreement will be brought to the Board of Supervisors.
Well, I want to ask Mr. Mitra and the legal team to discern whether or not we have the ability to say, pursuant to the existing agreement, that work should not be done on other lands that will have an impact on our lands until we have an explicit agreement for compensation for the impacts. Mr. Mitra, I'm not expecting you to have that answer today, but apropos of Ms. Gallegos's willingness to get us some language here in short order, is that something we could get an answer to pretty quickly? Because, Mr. Rocha, if we don't have any legal standing, then we don't. Fair enough. But if we do, saying, well, we hope to have an agreement before the impacts, but the work's already been done and the impacts are headed our way, again, I would find that unsatisfactory.
Thank you. And I'll interject. Steve, you're still there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. And I think it was mentioned by Don or Tim that Chris in your office is representing your office in this issue. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Wonderful. Is there any
So,
further? Steve,
yeah, Mr. Chairman.
From Supervisor Simitian?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that, part of the way we assess all this is by having an inundation study. Am I remembering that right, Mr. Rocha? Or Mr. Hevington?
As part of what we're looking for is an inundation study for downstream impacts, but there are identified impacts that we are working with the district on compensation that we can bring back to, that we will planning on bringing back to the board that are not associated with inundation.
But in order to have a complete picture and therefore have a complete agreement and therefore have complete assurance that we will have complete recompense, we need to have an inundation study, yes?
Correct, yes.
And we don't have one, or do we?
We don't have one, but the district has told us that they have done inundation studies. We haven't seen it yet. So we are working with them to get a copy of it.
All right. So here again, Ms. Gallegos, I'm going to ask you to try and provide some assurance that the work's not going to go forward until we have an inundation study that tells us what the impacts are.
Supervisor Gideon, you're going in and out. Maybe your microphone?
Forgive me. I'm looking for some assurance that the work will not go forward until we have the inundation study, which I believe is a requirement of that larger agreement, Mr. Heffington. Am I remembering that correctly?
I'm sorry, Supervisor, can you please repeat the question when you
Sure. We have a larger agreement with the district, the 2018 agreement, if I remember correctly, that sort of provides the overarching framework for subsequent agreements if work is to be done with impact on our properties and our operations. And I believe that we have a right to expect an inundation study pursuant to that 2018 agreement. Am I remembering the agreement correctly? I may not. It's, complicated stuff.
The actual 2018 agreement does not specify the inundation study, but it does state exactly what you said, that this is a framework for how we work out future agreements. So we are fully within our rights to request exactly what you have outlined.
Thank you for bringing greater precision to my remarks. So my point again, Ms. Gallegos, and to all parties is, I don't know how we can have assurance that we're going to be fully compensated for the impacts if we don't know what the impacts are, and we don't know what the impacts are until we get the inundation study. And as of this moment, we don't have an inundation study. And, I'm hearing assurances that one will be forthcoming. And I'm just saying, I want us to be clear, and again, I'm looking to County Counsel's office and to Ms. Gallegos, that we won't be permitting any of this work until we've reviewed the inundation study and then got an agreement for compensation. If this is important to the district, and I understand that it is, and if they have such a sense of urgency that they need special legislation to curtail the full requirements of CEQA, then it should be a matter of urgency to get us the documents and to reach agreement on appropriate compensation. That's my concern there. So, Ms. Gallegos, can we get a commitment from you to pursue this second matter with the team as well?
Yes, we understand your concerns and we will come back with information that addresses everything that you raised today.
Thank you. And the last issue I want to ask about, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your patience on this item, is potential impact to homeless folks who are living along these waterways. What's our thinking about that and how we'll address those concerns?
So when we reached out to the district, it's some of the flood walls, levees, and others. We'll address some of that within the downtown areas. But the information that was provided in the report is the information that we have from the district at this time.
Well, I know that our county staff are mindful and aware of the concern about these issues. I just worry when we're seeing work on a technical project that sometimes these human factors are an afterthought. And I don't mean that one critically. The other two I meant critically. This one I don't mean critically. I think it's understandable that people who are mission driven and who are trying to pursue a project are focused on the mission and may not always be mindful of the human costs or impacts. So let me just ask Mr. Rocha and Mr. Hevington and Ms. Gallegos and all parties involved, please make sure those issues are top of mind as people proceed with the project, okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you all. Forgive me, the lights are going on and off in my office, as is the custom here at 70 West Heading Street. So it's not an editorial comment from above, I feel sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thought that meant the play was resuming. No? Okay. Thank you. This is received report. You've received direction. There is no motion needed on this. And we can now move on to item number 7. And I want to say in advance, Don and Tim, Yuen, hi there. Haven't said hi to you before. I just want to thank all of you for looking into this. I agree with Supervisor Simidian that having the paper in hand, this is the leverage, the time that we have right now to go after whatever mitigation, damages, et cetera, that this project will cause the county over the years and making sure that we're protected. So thank you very much for that. Now move on to item 7. And I see Jacqueline, was on there. Rob, maybe Rob's going to open this up for us. This is to receive the annual report from our Department of Planning and Development regarding Smyrna, the county's Surface Mine and Reclamation Act. Good morning, Jacqueline. Good morning, Rob.
Good morning. Good morning. I will open this up. This is our annual report that summarizes the county's Surface Mining and Reclamation Act program for the calendar year of 2019. Rob Eastwood, our Planning Division Manager, and Rob Salisbury, our Senior Planner who manages the SMARA program, is prepared to present to Hewlett. Please, Mr. Eastwood.
I will start. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and hope I am successful. We do have a short presentation for the Hewlett Committee that I hope summarizes the report and may answer questions up front you may have. Let me adjust and start. Supervisor Wasserman, Supervisor Simidian, can you see my screen in the presentation?
I can. This is Supervisor Simidian.
Great.
Yes.
Great. Good morning. Rob Eastwood, as I mentioned, Planning Division Manager. We also have Rob Salisbury. He's our Senior Planner. He manages the SMART program. Also introducing with us is Manira Sandir. She's a Principal Planner. Of course, all three of us are here as a resource. I'll go ahead and walk through the presentation. This is a report you do receive annually. It gives you insight into how we review our surface mines and provide oversight and implementation of SMARA. Just a refresher on what SMARA is. I know both supervisors are probably likely briefed on this. This is a state law. Its main intent is to ensure that if you do conduct a surface mine, there is assurance that it will be restored and reclaimed at the end of surface mining. That is the heart of the SMARA program. It requires each surface mine have a reclamation plan that details how that mine will be restored or reclaimed. And key to that also is the establishment of a financial agreement or bond that allows the county or the mine operator to have enough sufficient financial resources to ensure that that mine is restored. The heart of the program is continuing to monitor these mines to ensure there is enough financial assurance to restore these mines and that the mining activity is in compliance with that reclamation plan. This county has 5 surface mines that we are currently overseeing. We had 6 until last year. 1 has been reclaimed and is off the books. So I'll walk through that. That's a bit of a success story. Those 5 mines are Kirtner, Freeman, Lehigh Permanente, Lexington, Serpa, and Stevens Creek. Giving you a little insight in where these are located, they're spread out a bit around the county. Of course, they're centered on where our mineral resources are located. Our 2 biggest mines, which I know both supervisors are aware of, are Lehigh Permanente and Stevens Creek. Those are located in the foothills just above Cupertino. We have a much smaller mine. This is located in District 1. This is above Los Gatos, next to Lexington Reservoir. A mine that was recently closed is down in South County, Freeman Quarry. I'll walk a bit through that and the actions there. And then we have 2 smaller mines, one that is idle, is not active at the moment, and one that is nearing reclamation up outside Milpitas. That is the Serpa Quarry and the Kirtner Quarry. We wanted to provide you just an overall snapshot, and all this information is in your report of the status of these mines. Again, the heart of this status report is to give you insight and review of how we're reviewing SMAR and making sure that we implement and review the rec plans and inspect these mines.
And Rob, if I may,
yes,
Rob,
go
I may
ahead.
interrupt for just a minute. Supervisor Simidian, I just wanted to make sure that you got this PowerPoint as well. I don't know if you were able to get that prior to this meeting.
I did, but I do appreciate the walkthrough today, Mr. Chairman. So
the reason
yes.
the reason I raised that question was if you did not receive it, that would be one level of walkthrough. If you did receive it, I think that would be a different level of walkthrough. And
fair enough.
Yep. Thank you.
If you believe you need me to go deeper or less, please let me know, supervisors.
Will do.
Appreciate knowing you both have that in hand. Overall snapshot of our mines. As you see, we have 3 active mines. 1 is idle, 1 is fully reclaimed, and 1 is inactive. And again, this just gives insight, ensuring that we have a reclamation plan approved for each mine. We track the disturbed area. That's essential to knowing how much has been affected by mining and how much needs to be reclaimed. We presented how much we have in terms of the financial assurance to ensure that mine will be reclaimed. And then finally, we have the date of the last inspection. The report you have in this presentation hones on last year, 2019. I will let you know we are in the middle of our inspections for 2020. But a lot of the information you're seeing on the screen has been updated because we are completing those inspections as we speak. So what does SMAR require? I'll start here. Under the state act, we are required to do 1 annual inspection of each mine to look at the mine, ensure they are in compliance with the reclamation plan. There's also winterization, and we do that of all 5 quarries, and we're required to monitor and ensure that financial assurance is updated each and every year. And we have continued to do that. I do want to highlight to the committee, we do a lot of extra monitoring above and beyond what's required per SMAR. So on our 2 biggest mines, Stevens Creek and Lehigh Quarry, we conduct monthly, what we call boots on the ground inspections. We have a senior civil engineer and a senior planner who inspects these quarries each and every month. And the intent of this is to ensure that there's no activities, something happening out there that might be a deviation from the rec plans or the applicable use permits, and to provide assurance to the community that we continue to do this monitoring. I know one instrumental part of starting this was initial referral interest from the district supervisor Smitty on Lehigh, but we've both implemented that both for Lehigh and Stevens Creek Court. We go out each and every month to ensure they are adhering to their conditions. We do have winterization inspections. That's not essentially required per SMAR, but we want to make sure they are ready for the winter period and that runoff does not affect downstream water bodies. So we go out to all five quarries and do that. For our 2 biggest quarries, we present an annual status report to inform our planning commission and the public. Are they adhering to those conditions of approval? And that's presented each and every year on those 2 large quarries. We do extra water quality monitoring at Lexington Quarry that comes out of their use permit. There's been some questions on the turbidity of the water coming off that site. So we ensure those reports come in and are reviewed by us and the water district.
Rob, I'm sorry, what does that term mean?
Go ahead.
Rob, what does that term mean, turbidity?
Turbidity, and turbidity is the amount of sediment that is in the water that comes off of a site.
Thank you.
So typical in mining operations, there's a lot of dirt and dust. We want to ensure that the water is clean when it comes off site. Turbidity, if it's high, it's not clean. If it's low, it's clean.
And it's turbidity with a B like in Baker?
Turbidity with a B as in Baker or Bravo, yes.
Thank you.
Additionally, as needed, we've conducted joint inspections. We work with our regulatory partners, the regional board, the Fish and Wildlife Agency, and we've done at least one joint inspection last year at Lehigh Quarry, as oftentimes there's violations or issues that might affect the jurisdictional oversight of not only us, but these other agencies. Just want to give you insight. We try and be as transparent as possible with all the information we have, the reports, the status of our quarries. If you go to the department's website on SMARA, we've presented in the table all 6 quarries. We try and put it in a format where people can see where they're at, what the status is, when a reclamation plan was approved, how much is disturbed, what's the zoning, what's the general plan. And if you click on these links, you'll get a lot more reports related to each quarry. In addition, on Lehigh, we actually act as a clearinghouse. A lot of agencies have additional oversight on Lehigh, ranging from BACMID, the Bay Area Quality Management District, to the regional board. They often use our website as a clearinghouse, knowing we have the ability to post and house information, and the public often doesn't know where to go to get that information, which agency. They come to our website, and we use our website to inform the public on not only information we have, but information those agencies have. So I just want to let the committee know we present this information. We have data going back, I think, to the early 2000s, just on just about every quarry. Notable actions last year, Lehigh Permanente, and this I believe was presented to Hewlett once in the board. During those monthly inspections, we did see sediment discharge in the Permanente Creek. We issued a notice of violation. We led a joint inspection with the regional board staff. They issued a notice of violation. We directed Lehigh to implement corrective measures. They did, and we were proud to announce, and this was in a board meeting, that once they implemented those corrective measures, it abated the violation. That was closed as of April this year. Stevens Creek Quarry, we do have a lot of active movement with them on violations. There's been a violation that has occurred for the last 3 or 4 years due to slope failures on the quarry. And so the second bullet point, we've required them to enter into a compliance agreement to abate those violations. We are now amending that agreement to make sure the timelines that they submit the reclamation plans and information to abate those is much faster than has happened so far. In addition, we did increase that in financial assurance to reclaim the quarry by over $3 million. That was a big success story. It was undervalued for some years, and a big kudos to Rob Salisbury and the team. They were able to raise that to a point where we can be much more secure. There's financial resources to reclaim that quarry. Serpa is a smaller quarry, but during our inspections, we noticed there are disturbances outside the rec plan. We've issued a notice of violation, and we're pursuing a compliance agreement to address that. And last but not least, this is the real success story of SMARA. This is deep in your jurisdiction. Supervisor Wasserman, down south of Gilroy. Freeman Quarry has been active for 15, 20 years. They stopped mining. They started reclamation. In adhering to the rec plan, we were able to go out, ensure that they have reclaimed the quarry, and we sent a notification letter to the state. I will note, once we sent that notification letter to the state, it was accepted as concluded and reclaimed without comment. And I've been told by the industry that is very rare. Most often they will come, they will inspect, they will follow up. They have a lot of questions, but it shows the confidence in the state in our program that they accepted our closure documents without any comment whatsoever.
Fantastic.
Just to give you insight in how SMARA works, this is Freeman Quarry. So if you were at the site 7 years ago, you'd see an active quarry, a bunch of rock piles, active slopes being mined, rock crushing systems. That's on the left. And on the right is sort of the success story of SMARA. This is the flame slopes that you saw out there. If you walk out, it's a nice natural open space. So we always like it when SMARA achieves its intent.
That's great.
Last but not least, we do want to disclose, we have looked deep into one quarry and the monitoring. We know we've identified some gaps. specifically on the use permit and truck traffic that's needed to be monitored, and maybe one or two other categories. We have discovered there are data gaps throughout several years that we are attempting to close. We believe in general, the monitoring program there is very robust and secure. We've used outside consultants, boots on the ground, but we are reviewing that, and through diagnosing any gaps, we will close those gaps and ensure the monitoring tracks each and every condition going forward. So I do want to disclose that to the committee. That is something we are looking at very closely at this moment. With that, I'll close up with any questions. And again, myself, Rob Salisbury, Manir Sandir, and of course our director, Jacqueline, are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent report, excellent news, excellent page numbers. Good job, Rob. Supervisor Simidian, Vice Chair Simidian, if it's all right with you, I'll look to David to see if we have any questions.
Thank you. I think that's the sensible course, Mr.
Thank you. Mr. Leon.
We have no speakers, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you very much. Supervisor Simidian.
Thank you. Let me first just make an observation, Mr. Chairman, and that is, even by the standards of land use issues, I think regulating quarries is a particularly challenging task, frankly. It's not a simple thing. And, I think that's reflected in the report and by the fact that, each of the quarries that was identified has some outstanding issues that it just, I do have some comments and questions, particularly with respect to those in District 5. So I appreciate that. I just want to confirm with Ms. Anciano's staff, whether that's Mr. Eastwood or Mr. Salisbury or the director herself. We do have 2 rec plan amendments pending for Permanente Quarry, yes?
Mr. Jacqueline.
I'd be happy to answer that question.
I'm trying to unmute. Go ahead, Rob. Go ahead. I was trying to unmute. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Supervisor. This is Rob Salisbury, Senior Planner. So we have a reclamation plan amendment in process with Lehigh. That's their 2019 reclamation plan amendment. That's a complete replacement of the current 2012 reclamation plan amendment. At one time, there was a separate reclamation plan amendment just to correct the Hall Road violation, but at the department's request, Lehigh agreed to combine those applications into one reclamation plan amendment application. In addition to the reclamation plan amendment, there was also the Permanente Creek restoration program, which was required as a condition of approval mitigation measure under the 2012 reclamation plan approval, and that is also underway.
Thank you. So just to make sure I get my language technically correct, I should have said there's a reclamation plan amendment pending and a restoration plan amendment pending. Would that have been precise and correct?
That would have been more accurate. Yes, sir.
Thank you. As to the larger reclamation plan amendment, we have a memo from staff. I believe it is directed to our full board from Director Anciano regarding the issue of vested rights. And I guess my question is, and there are some issues raised in that memo. My question is, as I read it, it seems to me that we, in order to address the issues of what is or isn't appropriate and subject for further review, we're going to need the EIR before we make some of those judgments about vesting, because you can't really assess scope and impacts without the EIR.
I can answer if you like. That is correct. We are taking a holistic view of this, Supervisor Simidian, and the EIR is first. You have to do CEQA first before these actions, and we're unfolding into that the review of all the activities they propose and in potential scenario, should the supervisors in an evidentiary hearing on vesting determine that some of these activities are not vested. I hope that helps answer your question.
And that evidentiary hearing will require that we have the EIR before we put ourselves in a position of reaching a decision at an evidentiary hearing, yes?
That's a very good question. An evidentiary hearing on vesting by itself, and I looked at County Council to reconfirm, does not require CEQA. It's only evidentiary hearing to determine if you have legal nonconforming status or not. However, the administration is proposing that the board have a series of consecutive actions together that have both the evidentiary hearing and resulting reclamation plan. Since you'll be, in a sense, discussing all of the activities in the reclamation plan, both in the evidentiary hearing and in those subsequent hearings. So our proposed approach is to have CEQA done first, get that out of the way. That's required regardless as a first action. And then after that, you would enter into your evidentiary hearing. And then as a result of that, your deliberations on the rec plan itself.
Yeah, I think we can debate and or speculate and or even disagree about what is or isn't required, but just I think to the extent that the staff has identified in that August 5th memo a need to determine what activities are or are not vested, what scope is or is not vested, we're going to need to have the EIR in order to make that judgment in an informed way. Because while my review of the 2012 action by the board, which occurred prior to my coming back on the board, has been limited to date, my understanding is that it's mostly focused on geography rather than scope or intensity of operations. And I see nodding heads, Mr. Eastwood, so I just want to make sure that I can take that silent nod as a confirmation of my understanding, yes?
I'll make it verbal, yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
And I'd reconfirm your observation as an informational document. Yes, the IR is a critical document that will assist the board in those hearings.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a circular, conversation, but if the question is the activity vested based on scope or intensity of use, I think it's very difficult, if not impossible, to make that judgment in a fair and legally supportable way without having a clear notion of what the scope and intensity is by virtue of having done the EIR. So we're landing in the same place, but I sort of wanted to share my thinking with you and frankly with the public about why that sequence not only makes sense, but really is necessary. On the Stevens Creek Quarry, which is also in my district, Mr. Chairman, not to put too fine a point on it, but my understanding is they've been operating now without a valid use permit for 6 years, yes?
I can't confirm the actual dates. I'll look to Rob, but that's my recollection. Yes, that is correct.
I believe that it expired in 2015, but very close to 6 years.
All right, thanks. I'll say 5 or 6 years and we'll go get the exact date some other time. Thank you. So whether it's 5 or 6 years, I think that's undeniably excessive. I think the public will be, anxious to know how somebody can continue to operate for 5, 6 years. I know you all have been working on this, but it does seem to me like, the quarry gets a notice of violation and then we talk some more. So, let me ask, what's the timeline, and please try and be realistic for getting this thing resolved.
Yeah, I'll start, and of course, Rob, happy to jump in, and Jacqueline as necessary. It has taken too long, and we've discovered that. At this moment, without going into too much detail, because it is a code enforcement action, we are taking a more aggressive stance on telling them to put in shorter dates to submit and apply for and obtain the use permit and reclamation plan. I'd say to date, most of the exclamation, and I'd say technically it is valid, is that the geological studies necessary to support how the quarry will be reclaimed have been intense and deep. It hasn't been easy. That being said, it's staff's observation that we have at this point sufficient information to allow this application to come in, reprocessed, and get them back into compliance. So we are in the middle of a code enforcement, I'd say, push at this moment to be more aggressive on those dates in response to your observation and ours. And that's where we're at.
Well, you know, I will, of course, you know, always be keeping an open mind if and when we ever have to go into an evidentiary hearing at the board. But I will just say, if folks can't be, folks aren't in compliance for 5-6 years at a stretch, we need to get them into compliance, but fast. And if they're not prepared to get into compliance, then we need to be serious about the willingness of the county to shut them down. That's not anybody's goal. I understand if people are in lawful compliance, but you know, these are not small matters, and this is, you know, well, I think we all agree it's excessive. So it's what I would say to everybody is it's not only time, it's past time, and I hope everybody, including the property owner, understands that. And I don't want us to be having this conversation, Mr. Chairman, a year from now. We've had it the last year or two, and I think it's as I say, it's long past time. Let me ask questions about staff's comfortability about the financial assurances that are in place. I know you've had a lot of back and forth with folks at the quarry. My concern is that if there are inadequate financial assurances in place, that if at some point folks walk away from the property, that our county could be left footing the bill for the what I'll call a clean closure of the facility. How are you feeling about financial assurances that are in place? And have we ever run those by the state since they play a role in the mining as well? What do they think?
Great. Rob, could you address that question?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So financial assurances get reviewed and updated every year, and it certainly is sort of both an art and a science to fully evaluate how effective or how accurate a financial assurance cost estimate will truly be. In regards to process, under SMARA, we are required to, at many points in the process, send the financial assurance estimates to the state. They have the ability to comment on at 2 different points in that process. So with respect to Stevens Creek Quarry, we provided the opportunity to the state, and they did provide us some comments on the 2019 financial assurance cost estimate. However, because the cost estimate that was provided was a significant increase, after consultation with Department of Mine Reclamation, we determined that the best approach was to approve the financial assurance cost estimate as submitted, because again, it was a significant increase over the prior estimate, and then direct the operator to address some of the concerns raised by the state in the upcoming 2020 financial assurance cost estimate, which will be due in roughly 4 months.
Mr. Salisbury, I'm gonna put words in your mouth, and if they're the wrong words, you just lean in and tell me, okay? What I think I heard you just say is essentially a decision was made to take what progress we could get and nail that down, wrap it up, call it you know, better than where we were, but that there's still more work to be done on financial assurances in connection with this particular site. Yes?
Correct.
And I take that to mean, and now, you know, whether it's you or Mr. Eastwood or Ms. Anshano, if these folks were to walk away today for some reason, just say, okay, we're done, it's played out, we're moving on, the assurances we have in place today are not sufficient to make us feel comfortable that we could effectuate a clean closure.
That's a good question and a tricky question, Supervisor Smitty. I'll just a little more. The challenge with Stevens Creek is, way to put it is, we're between reclamation plans. As we mentioned earlier, they have violations, their slope failures. We've directed them to submit a new rec plan that addresses those slope failures. A lot of the tie-up has been, is there the geology study to support how you reclaim those? So some of it is what you know and what you don't know. I'll let Rob correct me. You know, what we have is a substantial increase in the bond. You saw that in the presentation. It went from, I think, $2.5 million to $5 million. And I think, you know, we wanted there to be, in general, more money is good than less money. And there's enough money there to allow reclamation of the current reclamation plan and perhaps more. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Rob. But to say with surety, because again, we don't know the results of some of these geology studies. And to your point, to every last drop or cleanliness, could we get there? I couldn't tell you that today because again, there is a little uncertainty here. But we took the position of aggressively going after more financial assurance to have in hand to deal with the reclamation and some of the uncertainties. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. I think perhaps, Mr. Chairman, if you're amenable, Supervisor Wasserman, the way to further address this and provide some additional confidence going forward is if we could have the committee, if you're willing, agendize for perhaps our December meeting, end of year, report back on the sufficiency, the nature and sufficiency of the financial assurances at all 6 of these quarries. I think 6 is the number. And that way, throughout the county, we would know that we were either in a position to ensure a cleanup when the time comes, or what the status of efforts was to get us to that place. Is that something, Mr. Wasserman, that you'd be comfortable agendizing in December?
Yes, I just have a question for Rob Salisbury. Rob, you mentioned 4 months as far as Stevens Creek. That would be December. So by December, you would either have their new estimated cost or might not.
Thank you, Supervisor Wasserman. Yes, that is correct. SMAR requires that the operator provide the financial assurance cost estimate no more than 30 days after each year's annual inspection. So Stevens Creek Quarry's annual inspection is scheduled for September.
Oh, okay.
And so we will have their 2020 financial assurance cost estimate in hand
before
in the end of October.
Good.
However, we will in December still be in the review and approval cycle for that phase. So we will have a revised financial assurance in, but it won't have completed the review and processing steps required to approve it and then direct the operator to post the corresponding mechanism.
You may not have that review done, is what you're saying, by our December meeting.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's
Mr.
fine.
Chair,
Supervisor.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think if you're amenable, and I gather you are, and thank you for that, I think that December report back still makes sense.
Yes.
Given the number of moving pieces here, I doubt there's ever going to be a moment when we say, oh, it's all done and we're all wrapped up in a bow on a half dozen different sites. I also think that just because we, as a process matter, don't know who sits on what committees in January of the coming year, getting this done in December of this year, at least to the extent that it can be done, given the schedule staff's laid out, would be helpful. So with your agreement, if we can direct staff to come back to us with a report, and if you're prepared to agendize that for December, I think that would provide some assurances about the assurances. Let's try it that way. Okay.
Yes, and Sylvia, can you make a note of that? Thank you very much. All right, anything else on this item, Supervisor Smithian?
Let me just double check. I scribbled a couple of notes here. No, I think that's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. And thank you to staff for walking us through this. And I want to close on a positive note as I look at Ms. Unshano and Mr. Salisbury and Mr. Eastwood. I am sensing an increased effort to be more rigorous in this field, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the reports on the dams and the mines were both very, very educational and helpful, and I agree with Supervisor Simidian. We need to stay on top of both of these. With that,
You need a motion to receive the report, Mr. Chairman. Just, I know the.
no, we
Okay.
do not. And we will adjourn this meeting unless there's exception to September 17th at 10 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to you all.
Seeing none, stay safe, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.